Hey everyone, and welcome back to the third part in our Head Anatomy 101 tutorial series, where we're going to look at mouths. So we're going to look at mouths in two different contexts for the purposes of this tutorial. We're going to look at mouths when they're closed, and we're also going to look at mouths when they're open. And we'll look into the different rules I have personally associated with each context, and we'll look at how to get expressions in each way as well. And yeah, just other ways you can practice kind of making your characters a bit more expressive and making sure your mouths are accurate. So obviously a closed mouth is quite a simple structure. We're just going to look at two separate points at either end and a simple line that connects the two. Obviously, depending on the curve of the line, it's going to really reflect the intensity of the expression. Obviously, whether it's up or down, will reflect whether the character's happy or sad or angry, or, being sarcastic or anything like that. So assuming that we all know how to draw two dots and a line to create the impression of a smile, the purpose of today's tutorial will be to make sure that this looks right in the context of three-dimensional space. So for this video, we've got a head that's at a 3/4 angle, but slightly downturned, and we're going to make sure that we can draw a basic smile that looks relatively correct in 3D perspective. So I'm just going to draw in a curve of roughly what I think looks correct for this angle. I've definitely distorted it so it comes more diagonal across than just like a standard curve shape. But we've also got to consider that the planes of the face actually curve as we go around the front of it. Obviously our faces aren't just like a flat shape, it's dimensional on all sides. So with regards to this smile I've drawn just here, the actual apex of the curve should actually come a bit further under the nose. Because if we look at the actual proportions of the face and the line, this imaginary line that's drawn between the actual nose and the chin, the center of the mouth actually lines up with the center of that. And so I need to bring it a little bit over to where I've just marked just here. If you want a little bit more of a, detailed explanation of this kind of line I'm describing, you probably want to go back and look at the proportions video that I started with. And I'm just going to fix this curve up here and bring that apex a little further over. Probably overdid it a little bit, but we're getting a bit more of an impression of bringing the mouth a bit more kind of forward as it should be. I think, touching up that thickness has fixed it a little bit more. Two other things that are pretty important, I think, when conveying a realistic smile. Always like to draw in kind of bottom lip structure, just to fill it out, give a bit more kind of volume to the smile. And also to get these creases right at either side of, at each corner of the mouth. I just think it makes the smile look a bit more realistic because it shows that there's skin that's actually folding and creasing around it. And so I think even when it's done in a stylized manner, it can be really effective in making your smiles just look, that bit more, lifelike and not so uncanny. So just in editing, I've just sped up this little part of the video so I can add some eyes, make the face look a little bit more accurate, and fix up the mouth a tad as well. So we'll just briefly touch on the kind of half open mouth smiles. I feel they fit better in this section than the open mouth section. So really, you just want to kind of replicate the curve of the smile in both the top and the bottom line. The top curve will be slightly less, slightly straighter than the bottom. And you just want to remember to have a little kind of bit of a shadow in there to give the impression of teeth. And make sure you draw in that bottom lip line as well, just like we've done before. So honestly, one of the simple shapes to draw, and I know that a lot of people have pretty much mastered it. So I don't really think it's something worth going too far into. Just making sure you kind of, carry on the basics I had before, the same creases, things like that. And so I have gone through and made a few more adjustments to this base model. I just fixed up, I'm going to fix up a bit of this head here too. Just make it a little bit more accurate. But I think it's important to remember our art's always a work in progress. You don't have to, lock yourself into anything too soon, and things don't have to be perfect right away. But we're going to use this base head as a way to explore other facial expressions and features with these like closed or very slightly open mouths. More specifically, I think it would be really good to get a kind of a range between like a kind of half smiling like this guy's got and a fully kind of more sad face at the end. So we're going to capture a bit more of a basic expression here. So the line we're going to go for is relatively straight with a slight downturn, and you're still just drawing the impression of the lips. As you can see, I've made this expression a little bit smaller than the actual smile. Obviously, when you smile, your mouth gets a lot wider than it normally would. So that's another thing to remember when you're looking at the differences between expressions, making sure that when you're stretching the dimensions of the mouth, that it's kind of in line to what you would see in real life. Now with our third expression, we're really going to push up the sadness factor here. Our downturn is going to be a lot more increased, but we're going to keep that apex of the curve just under the nose, like we've said before. We're going to keep in those little dimples either side of the lip at the edges right there. But now, because it's such an intense expression, we're going to draw in these extra little impression lines just to show that the muscles are really working to push that. Which means we can draw in ones in kind of these nasolabial folds as well. And even we'll go back up and we'll fix up these eyebrows. We'll push these eyebrows to curve more upwards, more in, give a more sympathetic expression. Even now going across, you can see we've got relatively flat eyebrows for this character with a decent smile, little dimple, eye shape remains the same. And now comparing these other two, you can see how these other wrinkles and folds aren't really there, but they really pushed in this last character, including those folds I just mentioned, and the same in comparing the position of the eyebrows. So even though the focus of this video is the mouth, I just want to demonstrate how it's all about a combination of different facial features and the positions that they're in and the shapes they make is what comes together to create an accurate emotion for a character. You can't have one without the other. So always remember that when you're going for certain positions of mouths or anything, that you want to make sure your other facial features complement that actually reflect that same emotion in that character. So now we're going to move on to drawing the open mouth in a 3D context. So if you remember from the eye tutorial video, I gave a pretty kind of abstract orange peel slice shape to use as a base for when you're looking at drawing the eye in perspective. For the mouth, I'm actually going to ask you to look at the teeth of the character. So you're really just going to be drawing two kind of, I guess you imagine, kind of curved paper strips, which will act as the teeth that form the guideline for what you're actually going to draw the shape of the mouth around. So if we draw in a rough... So getting really used to drawing these shapes in 3D. So again, it's really good to practice drawing these shapes in 3D perspective. And I'll show in practice how I would use this shape here. So we'll draw another head. We'll go 3/4 this time, but we'll do a slight upturn so we can see a difference this time. So in this case, I'm going to draw in these little, teeth shapes here. Slight downturn, but also in this little bit of a perspective, you're not really going to see it kind of in an orthogonal view. The backs of the teeth are getting a little bit smaller. And we'll do a profile view as well. So I'll go down here, draw in a rough head shape. And we'll just position them roughly where I think the teeth should be from this perspective. Because we're also going to look at what happens to the jaw when the mouth actually opens. And we'll just finish up with the lips in here. So in drawing this shape, just to go back in drawing this shape, just make sure you're really loose with curved lines. You just get used to having... So just make sure you get really confident, big strokes with these lines. You get used to drawing this kind of strip, this folded strip in perspective. Just any way you like. And now we're going to go back through and actually show how I would draw a mouth on this character. So we're going to give them kind of an angry expression. I'll draw these eyes looking upwards, maybe they're angry looking up at something. I'll draw in these eyebrows roughly. We're going to draw in I guess you would say, a trapezium shape. And we'll bring the corners of the mouth down. So I think, yeah, for this character, we want them to be angry. So I think for this character, we know their mouth's open. We don't know whether they're going to be angry or sad. So we can do the eyebrows either way. But I guess with an open mouth, just like how we've kind of touched on with that smile, you kind of want to have a trapezium shape. Either, like, you know, upside down or right way up. Just with the corners going in which way. So before we get into actually drawing in the mouth over this character, we'll just touch on a little bit of shape language, where you've obviously going to take this basic. So before we draw in the actual mouth in this character, we're just going to do a little bit of analysis on the shape language. The basic shape you want kind of for the mouth, I found, is a trapezium shape, either right way up or upside down, depending on whether you want to convey a happy or a sad emotion. And then a circle is the kind of other shape you want to go for in the mouth. It usually indicates surprise or something else. And just making sure that you always keep to that rough shape. Even if you're kind of feeling it's not quite right. You can always go back later, change things exactly, but this is the rough general shape you want to go. We're just looking at rough at the moment. You can go back in and fix things up later. So for this character, I'm thinking we really want to push. They're angry. Let's go for the sad and / yelling one. So we'll get some eyebrows drawn in, and then we're going to touch up. We're going to erase kind of some of these areas around where the teeth are. We're going to bring in this trapezium shape and draw in these lines and close off those areas. We're going to hide that areas of the teeth from view that you wouldn't normally see. We're also when a character's this angry as well, you've also got sometimes that part of their lip on the left or the right can pull up. So to make this expression a bit more interesting, we're going to pull up this left side of their lip from their perspective. Just to make it look like they're really angry. Like their gums are showing they're so angry. But you can see how I'm keeping that rough trapezoid shape on the outside of the mouth that I've used to block off where the teeth is. I'm going to draw in some extra folds as well, obviously where the muscles contract a lot at the corners of the mouth and at this little thing he's got at the top. I'm going to do the lip as well. We'll emphasize this lip shape to give it the expression a bit more dimension. I'm just going back through and touching up these teeth a little bit as well. We want to see a little bit more of this curve, especially three-dimensionality. We want to get a bit more of this back of this curve of these top teeth here. And we'll draw in a bit of the gums here too. So going back through editing, I'm going to speed up this part here. Just because I'm going to touch up some other areas of the face to make it look like they're actually more angry. I'm going to draw in some more ridges. I'm going to make this nose and have the nostrils more flared. There's lots and lots of ways that you can show a character has a, there's lots of ways you can really push an expression with a character, but we're going to kind of focus more on the mouths for the purposes of this video. My main point is just always making sure you draw in... My main points is just always make sure you're doing realistic folds in the skin. Look at photos of people angry or crying or happy. Notice where the face is folding, where the position of the mouth, the nose. Be really detailed in what you're actually looking for. And then try to create an actual impression of that when you're doing your own work. So do practice, make bad sketches, just really push it. So I've just finished up and gone through and added some more shading to this one. So you can see how I basically used that double strip shape of the teeth and that upside down trapezoidal shape to create this yelling mouth. And I've used, I guess, this trapezoid as a bit of a mask, or like a kind of a clipping mask, I guess, if you want to think of it as that kind of analogy. And I've just gotten rid of all the teeth part that you can't see. I think an important part to note quickly is just that you always want to maintain relatively the same volume of the actual mouth shape that you're looking for. So you don't want to push it so much that it looks like, oh, hey, how does their mouth possibly stretch that large? You want to still maintain that the actual volume between... You want to look at the volume between these right side up trapezoid, upside down trapezoid. You want to make sure the volume looks relatively the same when it's all outstretched. So don't push it too far into the uncanny, but also don't be afraid to make, big mouths, big expressive, yelling, crying, anything like that. Like, yeah, don't be afraid to push it. It's all about balance. You don't want to push it too far into uncanny, but also you don't want to be afraid of, shy away from some really great expressions. So just keep that in mind, and always look to references. It's like our greatest tool, and it's nothing worth turning your nose up at. So looking to our profile view, we're just going to go for like a simple, let's just say a simple smile. So we all also know that our teeth aren't visible from the side of our face, so we're going to erase most of this. We'll bring these teeth together for the purposes of this expression, just so I can show you the difference between a closed and open mouth from the side of the face. But I'll just fix this up here, erase all this stuff out, and I'll just bring these lines back from the parts of the lips that I've drawn in. We'll go back into that kind of upturned lines at either way that I showed before, up into that little crease that comes at the corner of the mouth. So you can see how from this profile perspective, there's still a very triangular shape language, akin to what I mentioned in the eyes in my last tutorial, from an open kind of smile. And we'll open this one up when you're looking from the side. So I'm just going through and tidying things up here and there. Obviously go and back and slow down videos if you want to see how I'm actually tidying up some of these facial features like the nose and everything like that. I will have a dedicated nose tutorial coming up next. But I will have a dedicated nose tutorial coming up next, so you probably don't need to pay too much attention to that. So what I'm going to cover now is what happens to the jaw when your mouth actually opens. And this is useful from drawing for any perspective, but I think the profile is the best way to illustrate it. So I'm just drawing in the jaw here and where the actual jawbone connects to the rest of the skull. Just drawing, yeah, you can see like where all the bones connect. And so the whole jaw hinges from that point that I've just drawn. It's just in front of the ear. So if I go through and I select this jaw, I'll just clear out this smile and we'll just leave the teeth just to make it very clear. I select this whole jaw and I rotate it and bring that point. I line it up so it's actually like it's pivoted on that jaw and swung around on that joint. You can see how the whole length of the face is actually increased. And so what I mentioned earlier about making sure the volume's consistent, we're going to connect these two parts by making sure our line isn't so long So obviously when your jaw is so far down, your skin's stretching to cover that new area that's created, that new distance between your two rows of teeth. So when we're looking to actually join, actually draw in what happens between these areas, obviously you're not going to see any very far into the side of the face or side of the mouth, because there's all that skin that's stretching to cover it. So it's what I mentioned earlier about making sure that you have that similar volume when you're looking at the actual shape of the mouth from the front. Except here, because we know the skin's stretching, we're going to make sure that it doesn't leave too far of a distance from the front of the mouth. When you think about when you're yelling, you look from the side, the person's face is actually quite, the skin gets stretched. If you think about how a person looks from the side when they're yelling, you'll see what I'm talking about. You'll see how that skin gets stretched from the top of the mouth to the bottom of the mouth. That circular structure I mentioned before is there, but we're just going to connect it. It's not going to go too far in, and you're not going to see, across through that open mouth area. You're not going to see too far back into the actual back of the teeth. So back in editing once again, I did actually go back through and fix up this face and a few of the issues I had with it that were pretty glaring in my opinion. I'm going to use it as a bit of a learning tool for you guys to show how I made this face look a bit more realistic and the things I actually changed to get from what I had before to this new version that I've just finished, and how it relates to things I've just taught about the mouth, especially with in regards to how the shape and length of the face changes when the jaw opens. So as we switch between the two expressions that I drew, you can see that there's a bit more of a rounder shape structure with the new one I did. And I've softened up a lot of the expressions. And I've softened up a lot of the lines on his face that were pretty harsh before. As you can see, in line with what I mentioned before about making sure that there's that consistent volume in the actual shape of the mouth, I brought the sides of that trapezium in, just because obviously the skin's going to stretch a lot more, and it looked really wide before. It looked a little bit uncanny to me. I did end up fixing some other things like the actual, in terms of the guidelines of the face, like the eyebrows, eye lines, other things like that. And also, in line with the fact that there was this really sharp jawline like this before, I rounded out and lengthened the facial structure a lot, gave it a bit more of a bigger chin, just like how with this jaw down the bottom, there's a greater curve when you're looking from a different perspective. Just like how the jaw has created the kind of lengthening of the face from this profile perspective. So in that way, I think I definitely improved what I just drawn, even from my own lessons. That's probably also another important thing about art, that you'll often forget and be pretty bad at things you've just learnt. You'll regress in some ways, one or another. So it's important to just keep trying at it. And like what I've just done, I've gone back and I fixed up and learnt from what I've done. I've looked at it with fresh eyes and I fixed it. So never let yourself get locked in to a certain way of viewing your art, that you have to get it perfectly right the first time. Just make sure that you keep trying, keep learning, and yeah, I guess that pretty much summarizes everything I want to get across in this tutorial on mouths. The next one coming up will be concerning noses. So yeah, thanks very much for watching this video. If you have any other questions about the mouth or other things I probably was a bit brief on in this video, just let me know in the comments, and I'll see you guys in the next tutorial.